eventually people are going to say, what the hell is going on?
No matter how far you go into the dark, when you flip, you go exactly the same place to the light in our galaxy. Everything. Because everything is in balance. Everything is a polarity.
I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is.
What the hell is actually going on, guys? I'm excited. I'm excited. It's getting extra weird in tonight's show, just how we like it. We're talking Nordics, we're talking who runs the world, we're talking the moon is a satellite. It's just all of the good things. Okay, we're gonna have a lot of fun today. And it's a big show. It's a big show, so I don't want to waste too much time. We've got a little kind of prologue to the show. Okay, so we've got a few things that we're going to look at just to kind of prime you. You know, you got to put the undercoat on first before you lay on the final coat. Okay, so we've got a little undercoat just to get a few things spinning around in the brain, and then we're going to hit it with the final coat, and it's going to be good. Trust me. Trust me. Taris has gifted 10 memberships. Taris, you beautiful human being. Thank you very much, sir. Let's get some love hearts up in the chat for Taris, the absolute legend, and for all the new weirdos that we just got. And Grey Hair Discoveries has also just become a member. You little freak, sir. Or ma'am. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, guys. If you are a new member as well, make sure you check out the members-only content. We're probably a little bit overdue, to be honest, for a members-only video, so I will make a note of that, and there'll be another one coming soon. Also, maybe I'll just throw this out here while we're talking about it. Thinking about doing, like, you know, when we have the normal streams, right? They normally go for an hour and a half sometimes. I'm thinking about doing routinely like a half hour to even maybe another, half hour to an hour straight after members only. So it's kind of going to be like an uncut, after dark version of the show, but where we basically go to more of like a conversational show where we're kind of talking more back and forth rather than me just presenting. Just an idea that I've got in the head, because I like interacting with you guys. I really do. Like, that's what I enjoy most. But we know that when we do that for too long, Darren from Bristol gets angry in the comments and he gets Dorito cheese all over his keyboard. And we don't want that. We don't want that for Darren. Okay. He's clearly having a bad day every day. So we've got to look out for him. But let's stop yapping. I think that's a fun idea, and I'm looking forward to that. But let's get into the show. So the truth is classified, and that is kind of the premise of the show, and that's where we're starting, because it seems like, with all these whistleblowers and all these people that come out and they can say certain things, but it is all kind of technically pre-approved, right? But the people who get too close to the truth are the ones who get silenced because the real truth, seems to be classified. So let's take a listen to Jeff Nuccetelli, who we just heard from at the UAP hearing. And he's basically going to give his version of that. And then we're going to look at a few other people who have said the same thing.
The hearing was the first step, a new step, into getting to the point where people can be safe to come out and speak the truth. And there is a army behind Dylan and Matthew Brown and I and many others, people waiting in the shadows that are unable to speak the truth because the government will not allow them. The truth is classified.
There you go.
And if anyone tries to come out and help Congress, their lives are destroyed. And that's the thing. Some, Dylan and Matthew and I all know people that are in that state right now. They're unemployed. Their clearances are gone. They're in this limbo state simply because they tried to speak the truth to Congress or Arrow or the FBI. And then the retaliation occurs.
Okay, so you're saying...
It sounds a lot like, Arrow, the FBI, Congress. What's actually happening is the people who are actually telling the truth, the people who are coming forward saying, like, with the knowledge bombs, they're just getting swept up. Like, it's like it's like a trap. It's like a trap. They're going, yeah, come and tell us. And then they come in and they tell them and they're like, yeah, you're gone. You can't be saying that. And this kind of gets back to what I've been saying. Like, why are whistleblowers allowed to say certain things but not other things? Doesn't that mean you're not really a whistleblower? And I'm not trying to throw shade at any of the whistleblowers, by the way, but I'm just thinking about it logically. Like, it just doesn't really add up to me.
Straight up, very explicit retaliation, exactly the kind of thing that the whistleblower process is designed to take care of. That,
if people knew how deep and dark and terrifying the retaliation is, the American people would be outraged, they would be shocked, and they would be demanding Congress act now. But the problem is those whistleblowers are not safe to come out and tell the American people what is happening to them. So that's what the hearing's about. The battle begins now. If people want disclosure, if they want to hear about the people that worked on the tech or worked on crash recoveries, we need to establish a baseline level of security before we can get to that. Because right now, those people are not going to come forward because they are not protected. And the day after the hearing's over, they're on their own.
Okay, well, it's very good that you point that out because, and we should not be critical of members of Congress or specific senators here. So that's not my point. But I think people don't understand that Congress can't really provide strong protections to people who come in and do testimony. That's not the whistleblower process. That happens through the IGs, and it's a very distinct process.
Can't help but wonder if it's been set up that way on purpose. Congress are the ones saying we need people to come forward, but Congress don't have the ability to protect anyone. Convenient, right?
Now, I didn't expect us to leave UAP events and experiences and move into the deeper secrecy of, which concerns allegations of let's say, a retrieval and study program of UAP. But that's what you're talking about right now. So what is your picture of that? What are you hearing from people that we know about in public, but also that, it sounds like whose names are not known publicly?
I do know some. And the thing is, I don't know more than anybody else in the community because we're waiting for the people with the real truth to come forward. And that's where we're at right now. Everybody has heard David Grush's testimony about the crash retrievals and all the other aspects of this. What I'm talking about is bringing the people that have that knowledge forward in a protected way so they can tell us what's really true.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Understood. And I don't want to leave something you said behind because it's very important. I mean, you said a moment ago that people would be astonished and outraged, if I remember correctly, astonished and outraged if they knew the depth of the retaliation that people are facing. So can you specify a bit what you mean?
I can talk about direct threats, harassment, break-ins to people's homes, medical malpractice, professional malpractice, and darker things that I'm not comfortable talking about.
Darker things that he's not comfortable talking about. This is where I think we start to get into the terrible truth, right? The terrible truth. But before we get to that, I've got one more clip I'm going to show you from Dr. Stephen Greer, who is a medical doctor, by the way, for anyone who didn't know that. I don't think he's mentioned it before. This is an old clip from Greer, and it's from the Patrick Bet-David show, where he says something really interesting that really sort of aligns with all of this. Now, just quickly, LE with $5. Hey, Weirdo family, I'm in need for some healing energies or high vibrations for myself and my unborn child. Could I bank on y'all to have my back? L, absolutely you can. Guys, let's throw up lots of love hearts for L. Show her some love. Shout out to you. I hope you're feeling good. I hope you're feeling okay. Hope you have a great day, and I hope it continues to get better, L. Lots of love out your way. And Kerry Salt with a little coffee sticker. Thank you very much, Kerry. I appreciate that. I could use a coffee. Absolutely. All right, let's hear from Stephen Greer.
Now, Now, the other problem is when you tell the actual truth about the subject, you discredit yourself. I was warned by a CIA guy in 1991. He said, if you tell the whole story here, the truth, it will discredit you because it's more bizarre than the fiction they're selling to the public.
That's in 1991. 1991, he's got CIA or ex-CIA telling him that if you tell the actual truth, like if you really tell the whole story of what's actually going on, no one's going to believe you because it's just wild. What if it's all true? What if it's all real?
And that is true. And I've never, had time with you to unpack all of that. But it's a insane amount of disinformation. But remember, if you have technologies like that, Pat, and you have the malicious intent to deceive the public or officials, you can do all kinds of skullduggery, and they have. Now, most people just take it at face value. Even these whistleblowers, they are tactical operators, right? I call them a tactical operator, helicopter, crash retrieval, whatever. They don't know what's going on the strategic level from at the top of that food chain, whether it be corporate or covert government programs. And the long game has always been to blend enough information with disinformation that the disinformation is believable. So, of course, this was very clandestine. It was an attempt to penetrate illegal black projects within our own country. But you're talking 30 years ago now. But President Clinton really did try to fix this, although he never talked about it publicly. And that's kudos to him. And then he backed off because it was just too dangerous.
Clinton tried to fix this, but he backed off because it's too dangerous. Like, think about that. Think about the implications of like what that actually means. The president, we can only assume he's referring to a time when Clinton was the president, or even if he wasn't, he's always been around that sphere. Let's assume he was president though. If the president is trying to fix people within their country operating beyond the oversight of government, and the president says it's too scary, what does that mean? To me, I think you're not dealing with, it's not like your military's just gotten out of hand. You're dealing with something else. You're dealing with something that is beyond your intelligence, beyond your capabilities, beyond your powers, something bigger than you that has the ability to control, manipulate, or get rid of you very easily. And, are we seeing the same thing happen right now? I mean, Trump's whole campaign was on transparency and disclosure on a whole bunch of things. And we're not really seeing any of that. Has the same thing happened to him? I don't know. I'm just speculating there. But it's interesting that Greer is saying the whole truth is so wild that people wouldn't even believe you. And it sounds a lot like the article written by Nick Pope in the Mirror about the terrible truth. This was last year. Fears imminent alien announcement could contain a truth too terrible to be told. Nick Pope, who once ran the UK government's UFO project, has warned that any message from extraterrestrials should be carefully analysed before being released to the public. Now, we're not going to read the whole article here because I have spoken about this before, but I just thought I'd bring it in because it just rings true to what we're talking about here. The fact that the truth about this is far darker and has deeper implications into humanity, who we are, why we're here, who put us here, etc. Okay, and that's what we're going to be really getting into in today's video. So that was like I said, that was just the primer. And a lot of today's video, as I'm sure a lot of you guys will have guessed, is going to be focusing on a few clips from Jason Jorjani, a couple from the Jesse Michels interview, which, by the way, everything is linked below. If you haven't watched Jorjani on Jesse Michels, what are you doing with your life? Now, it is 3 hours, so it's a big commitment, but you won't regret it. Jason Jorjani is just a pleasure to listen to, not afraid to throw out wild theories, and that's what we love here, right? That's what we love. So you guys, if you haven't seen it yet, Go and check it out. We're going to be looking at a few clips today, so hopefully that'll show you just how good it is. And we've got a few other clips as well and a few other people to hear from. Crazy Kel has become a member. You little legend, Crazy Kel. Thank you very much. Rambro, you gifted a membership. My brother, thank you, man. I appreciate your generosity. BT is a member again as well. Thank you very much, BT. And Conspiracy Cutie throws in $5 and says, get good. And I like it. Thank you very much. Okay. This is the first clip. This is where we're going to take off because we want to, what we're trying to do here is we're going to theorize and look at the question of what could be so dark that it's too terrible to be told? Okay. Why would the actual truth be classified? Well, we can probably assume because it's pretty dark. It's at least the people in charge think it's so dark that the ramifications would destabilize society. So what could be so dark? Well, I'll let Jorjani take it away from here.
You've done like a plethora of interviews going into specific cases, so we don't want to get too bogged down, in the nitty gritty of cases here, but it's important to refer to a few empirical cases here. So, Ingo Swann, in the 1970s into the 1980s, did remote viewings of both the moon and of Mars. In the 1970s, he was taken from out of the SRI program that eventually became Stargate and Grill Flame and whatever. He was taken from out of that into some other black unit, which, he never learned what the name of it was. Some guy who identified himself as Axelrod took him like blindfolded by helicopter into some facility. And he was asked to remote view this target, of course, which he was blind to. It turned out that the target was the moon. And now, bear in mind just, that at this point we had detailed satellite reconnaissance photography of the moon. An important case in this regard is the testimony of Carl Wolf. Carl Wolf he was a...
If you've been watching the channel, we watched this maybe about a month ago. We watched the full disclosure press conference by Stephen Greer in 2001, which was where Carl Wolf gave this testimony about seeing megalithic structures on the dark side of the moon.
Photographic repair expert, and at that time sergeant in the early 1960s leading up to the Apollo missions. And at one point he was brought to what he thought was an NSA facility because he thought was a NASA facility because he'd never heard of the NSA. A lot of Americans hadn't. It turned out it was an NSA facility that was processing lunar orbiter reconnaissance photos. And Carl Wolf, long story short, he says he, in the course of repairing this machine, was shown mosaic photographs of a huge megalithic city on the dark side of the moon. That there was a city with largely polygonal architecture, Titanic scale structures, but they weren't made of metal and glass. They were made of something that, to him looked like poured stone, like concrete or something. And in fact, they reminded him of, megalithic architecture on the Earth. Now, back to Ingo Swann. So point being, if Carl Wolf saw mosaic photographs in the 1960s, Swann in the 70s is being tasked to remote view the moon by people who have access to these photographs. So I'm thinking
and
they
Carl
want
Wolf
him...
died a mysterious death after he...
Exactly. So, by the way, Carl Wolf, and this is horrible. These, so, I mean, what are we discussing? Disclosure and how disclosure could be manipulated. Well, just before this wave of so-called disclosure began, in 2017, 2018, poor Carl Wolf was run over just the way John Mack was run over, and I hardly think it's a coincidence because he...
It would be coincidence number 10,671 if it was. But,
would definitely have been one of the people subpoenaed to testify. And what Carl Wolf had to say is something that whoever's gatekeeping this whole disclosure business does not want out there in the public. In any case, Ingo Swann in the 1970s, when he was remote viewing what was on the moon, was dealing with people who had access to these photographs. And I think what they wanted was for him to snoop around on the ground, as it were, get a ground's eye view of this city on the dark side of the moon. And here's what he saw there. He saw tall Nordic people, statuesque Nordic people, who gave him a look like, you don't belong here.
This guy This guy looks like he plays guitar in a Norwegian black metal band, and he burns churches down as a side hobby.
Get the fuck out of here and don't come back. And he saw these same people lording over basically armies of slave laborers who he said were naked, and meaning that they're probably under some kind of a dome that we can't see, transparent dome or something. And they were living in these like ramshackle, like makeshift
Nordics are metal? Dude, Nordics are metal as fuck.
shelters under appalling conditions, conducting slave labor on the moon. Swan also remote viewed Mars in the early 80s. And he said these same people who he had seen on the moon were responsible for a civilization, the ruins of which he viewed on Mars. There were very large, like honeycombed cities, which he said showed evidence of explosions, internal explosions. Like, you know, he said he had the impression that a battle had taken place there.
What's funny you say that. There's a PhD physics who's I think he worked at Sandia or Los Alamos and also Lawrence Livermore. His name is John Brandenburg, and he says that xenon 129 and argon 40 exist in excess of what you would ever expect just from natural radioactive isotope decay, and that proves that there was actually some nuclear holocaust on Mars.
Well, they found a large amount of xenon 129, which is the product of two things. Supernova explosions and hydrogen bomb explosions. And we know there was no supernova on Mars. If there was, there wouldn't be a solar system here.
And you said there was one other argon?
There was when you irradiate rocks that have potassium in them, and all rocks do, they produce a isotope called argon 40, and that's super abundant on Mars. So you have two things that are products of what look like an intense nuclear reaction on Mars in the atmosphere.
Yeah, I spent several days with Dr. Brandenburg in New Mexico, and I put this in Closer Encounters, this research of Dr. Brandenburg, that basically the deviation from normal of the isotopic ratio of xenon 129 in Cydonia specifically, where we have photographic evidence of ruins on Mars, the xenon 129 isotopic signature at Cydonia, he has discovered, is only matched by thermonuclear test sites on the Earth. It's the only other place in the solar system where we see that kind of signature. And he came to that conclusion when he was working at Sandia Labs, which is where, you know, nuclear weapons research takes place in the United States. Okay.
So, obviously, we're really focusing on the moon here, right? But I wanted to include this bit because I just think it's fascinating that this place that we all have seen for a long, long time on Mars that seems to depict a face, you know, whether it is actually a face or not, it's certainly a strange structure. And there are other pyramid-like structures and sort of shapes around it. This area in particular is dense with mineral ratios that are only akin to like thermonuclear detonation fallout. That's the only place that it's known to exist like that. So what does that mean? It's interesting, like, you know, we all talk about we need to get to Mars, we need to get to Mars. What if we came from Mars? What if Earth was the place we went after we already nuked ourselves to death the first time? And Earth was the refuge. These are the things that we're going to continue to get into here. But I want to get back to the moon just quickly because we're going to go a little bit deeper on the moon. Tyler D, celebrating 2 months as a member, says Trump is allegedly going to release declassified files on Amelia Earhart. He says we'll blow people away with how crazy it is. There's photos and recording. Interesting, sir. I have no idea who Amelia Earhart is, but it does sound interesting. I'll have to keep an eye out for it. Thank you very much. Di has gifted a membership. Thank you very much, Di. You absolute legend. And Tommy has gifted 5 of them. Tommy, my man, thank you very much, brother. I appreciate your generosity. Let's get some love hearts up for the new weirdos. And while we do that, let's take a look at some strange moon videos. Now, I've wanted to look at these kind of things for a while now because there are a lot of, I've seen these for a long time. There are lots of videos that people have taken. And like some people have even recorded these on their like Samsung Ultra Galaxy, 700. Some people are doing these on their Samsung Galaxies. There are lots of pieces of footage out on the internet that seem to show objects entering and leaving the moon. Now, could some of these be faked? Of course, you can fake anything these days. But these kinds of clips have been around for a long time, and there are lots of them. This one here is just one of them. But I've got 3 more that I want to show you. People saying that I'm showing my age because I don't know who Amelia Earhart is. Probably. Although I'm not that young, really. I don't think I am. But I also am just like, dude, I'll tell you about like the most deepest, twisted alien conspiracy. The elites are all satanic pedophiles. I will go down that rabbit hole. But like, if you ask me like, oh, what movie was Brad Pitt in? Bro, I don't know. I don't know movies and people and things. I know aliens. And that the queen is a lizard. Okay, if you want to know about that, ask me. If you want to know who Amelia Earhart is, don't ask me, bro. I'm not the guy. All right, so there's this one here as well. These look, the way these things move really remind me of the what is it called? Satellite STS-48. You've just got these. I'm not going to say tic tac because who really knows what shape they are, but just these little white dots moving in and out of the moon. And again, that's not the only one. We've got another one here. This one, I believe, casts a shadow somewhere. Some of these videos had sound, but they were irrelevant. Obviously, there's no audio coming from the moon, so we don't need the sound. But this one's highlighting like a triangular shape here. And then I believe we see it like fly past in the second half, in the bottom left here. Yeah, and you sort of see a shadow cast there as well. Again, some of the, like, I can't vouch for these videos, by the way. As most of you guys know, I do have a visual effects background, so I do think sometimes like you can tell things, you can get a bit of an idea by eye. Interesting shape as well, very triangular. Almost looks a bit organic in a way. Like it almost looks like the wings are like a bird or something. It's an interesting video nonetheless. And at the end of the day, like I said, if some of these are fake, who knows? But only one of them needs to be real. And there really is so many. Like I'm sure you guys have seen these clips before, or maybe even other ones that are similar, because there really is so many. There's another one with a shadow. And there's even another one that we're going to get to at the end of this video when we wrap up. Rambo says that's a balloon. Yep. I do think that may have been. It was probably one of those Chinese lanterns that are fueled with swamp gas from Venus that they usually put over the moon. That would make the most sense, I think, here. There's really nothing else that makes sense, in fact. Matt Disney, celebrating 2 months as a member. Almost 80k subs. Get it, brother. Amelia was the first woman to fly across the ocean but disappeared in the Bermuda Triangle. Interesting. Very, very interesting. I'll have to add that to my conspiracy repertoire. Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate the support. So I just wanted to, again, keep the undercoat strong, keep the priming going. We've seen a little bit of moon strangeness. Well, now Jorjani is going to tell you just how weird it is.
The geometry and the mathematics of the moon in relation to the Earth and the sun, it makes no sense. The moon is 1/400th the distance between the Earth and the sun, and it's 1/400th the size of the sun. And so that creates these perfect eclipses that we see, right? That by itself is very odd. And then you look at the fact that the craters on the moon are all only a few miles deep. You never find a crater on the moon that's more than 5 or 6 miles deep. But some of these craters are like 186 miles wide, right? So, and at the base of the largest craters, you see a convex surface. In other words, it looks nothing like the Grand Canyon or the Valles Marineris on Mars, where an asteroid would hit it and you'd see a deep gouge that should be proportionally as deep as it is wide. No.
Isn't that so true and interesting that when you look at the moon, all of the craters are like the same depth, despite how wide they are? Now, I'm not a geologist, I'm not a scientist, I'm not Avi Loeb, I'm not asking everyone for $1 billion, okay? But my logical brain says the big crater that's very wide should go deeper than this tiny crater, but they're all pretty much the same. That to me says that there is like a hard layer there, like just under the surface, that no matter how big your asteroid or your 3i Atlas is, it doesn't matter. It's not going to go past this reinforced shell that seems to be laying beneath the crust, quite shallow.
What you're seeing apparently is a hard shell that's being revealed through the impact against the regolith by whatever object. The ejecta is going 186 miles out in every direction, but there's never a crater deeper than a few miles, and what's being revealed there at the crater base is a hard convex surface. Then there's the impact. One of them was a test, one of them was accidental. The first one, I think part of an Apollo lander hit the moon, and there was a seismograph that had already been positioned there, and it registered basically the seismic signature that you would face if you were measuring a hollow object. That basically the reverberations went down for about 20 miles, and then they stop. And the way that the reverberation was distributed throughout the moon suggested that, as the observers, put it, it rang like a bell. So there's...
MIB says there's nothing weird about the moon. Brother, I'm going to assume you're being sarcastic, because there's so many weird things about the moon, but I'm sure you know that. Stevie, my man, with $10 says, Mr. Start, skipping to live, you need to get Jason Jorjani on. You could talk for 9 hours and I'd watch it. Bro, I would get Jason Jorjani on and I would just say, Jason, just go for it, bro. Just say whatever you want to say. I'm here for it. I'm listening and I'm enjoying it. I'm going to enjoy it. I already know. The sad truth is I reached out to him and it was a swing and a miss. The old air ball. Brother, Big Jason ghosted me, but that's okay. That's okay. You miss every shot you don't take, and we'll be back stronger, and we'll try again. We will get Jason on the show one day.
All this evidence that the moon is an artificial satellite, and setting this in the context of Joe McMoneagle's remote viewing of Mars, what I argue in Closer Encounters is that the people on Mars probably constructed the moon for two purposes. One, as a very large-scale transport of a significant population from Mars to the orbit of the Earth.
I will say that this is probably Jason's wildest theory. I mean, what Jason Jorjani is great at doing is, and this is why I really like listening to him, because he has a theory that basically ties together everything. And I'm talking early 20th century, even to even to Atlantis, to what actually happened in World War II, to the Nazi Germany, to the UFO problem, to the Nordic control structure, to the moon being hollow. There's all of these separate conspiracy theories, but Jason Jorjani explains how they all connect. And that's why he's so compelling. Use your discernment. Maybe the moon wasn't a transport ship from Mars to Earth. Maybe it was, but maybe it wasn't. Who knows? But why I think he's interesting is because not many people are out there trying to see how all of this fits together. And, sometimes these conspiracy theories on their own, they can just sound too wild, right? When you look at each one individually, you're like, man, that can't be true. That's just too crazy. But then when you sort of see actually, but if you look at this, this, and this, maybe it does make sense. Or maybe you're just stringing a bunch of conspiracy theories together. Who knows? Who knows? Andre the Beard says, listen to Daryl D. James' story. He's a secret space program whistleblower, and it's a wild story, but in context of what's going on, it makes a ton of sense. Very interesting, Andre. Thank you very much, sir. And Michael Gibbons says, that's no moon. It's a space station. That's right, Michael. I think as each day passes, more and more people begin to realize that the moon is actually a Nordic Death Star.
And 2, as a terraforming device to radically alter the ecological situation of the planet so as to make it habitable for humans, right? They said there were these horrendous constant electrical storms and volcanic eruptions and so on and so forth. Well, you know, the Earth spun a lot faster before if the moon had not been in orbit at some point, we would have been dealing with a planet that was a lot more unstable, spinning much faster, prone to toppling over. The moon acts as a tremendous stabilizer for the Earth. By the way, that's another thing about the moon, is that it has a unusually stable orbit as compared to the moons around other planets, as if there's a stabilizer inside of it. So I think it was created to transport a large population, and it was used as a terraforming device. Now, to answer your deeper question, what does that say about who these people are, right? Number one, it says that they're people. So NHI is not an appropriate appellation for these individuals, right? They look like us, particularly they look Nordic, and they appear to have been the progenitors of the human race. Not only that, they appear to have terraformed the Earth to make it habitable for humanoids. But I have one huge problem with all of that. The time scales. It makes no sense whatsoever to me that you would have people who look like us, I don't know, millions of years BC on Mars. The same people are basically, you know, I don't know, involved in the power struggle that's been remembered as the myth of the Atlantean Revolt. The same people are being encountered today by, let's say, Travis Walton. When Walton was abducted, first he had to deal with these grays, these little robotic entities that, you know, tried to put him back together after he, you know, sustained some kind of physical damage being thrown by the, you know, electrogravitic repulsion of the craft. But then he, you know, big strapping fellow that he was, he broke free of the control of these robots, and the medical facility or whatever went down the hallway, and he bumped into these Nordics. And from there on, he was handled by these people. He said they looked like they could all have been members of the same family. There are plenty.
By the way, and out of coincidence, Travis Walton, who he's just speaking about there, was just on Area 52 podcast this week. So if you guys haven't checked that out, go and check that out. I was going to include some clips in today's show, but I didn't want to go to all over the place, and we do have a lot of stuff to get into. But lots of good content out at the moment, guys. Go and make sure you go check that out. Lawrence McNeil says, "Hey Josh, I'm obsessed with this subject, UFOs, but your channel is the more personal, and you are doing a stellar job with breaking it down." Lawrence, thank you very much, sir. I appreciate that. I'm glad it feels like a little point of difference for you, because that's what I want to be. I do want to be a point of difference, and you know, I like to see myself not so much as like a, you know, creator that's like separate from the community. When I say community, I mean like you guys, not like the content creators. I'm a man of the people. I'm one of you guys, just talking about this, absorbing it all, and trying to make sense of it, and just trying to put the pieces together. I don't really see myself as like a, you know, like a Jesse Michels, for example. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I'm a massive fan, but you know what I mean? It's different for me. It's different. BT, another odd thing about the moon, the Apollo astronauts tried drilling into the surface and their bits kept breaking. Interesting. I had not heard that one, but it doesn't surprise me. Maybe that's why Neil Armstrong looked like they had a gun to his head when he came back to celebrate the greatest achievement of mankind in history ever to this day. And then NASA went, "Hey, that was the greatest achievement of mankind ever. Let's delete everything that took us there." It all makes sense, right? It's just logic. You come back from the greatest achievement of mankind, you look like you're a hostage with a gun to your head, and then you just delete all the technology that took you there. Makes sense. R.A. Clark, you freak. Welcome, sir. Thank you very much for the support. Go and check out the members-only content after the stream. Don't leave just yet. We've got plenty of good stuff to get into. And by the way, guys, if you are enjoying it all so far, please slap a like on the video. It's quick, it's free, and when you show your ticket when you leave, you get 20% off at your local mental health facility, which, when we're talking about the moon being a hollow Nordic satellite, you probably need.
Of cases that attest to the fact that the Greys are some kind of a cybernetic robot that work for these Nordics. And the Nordics appear to be the ones in control. So if there's a narrative that's being promulgated of, beneficent Nordics versus like inhuman, monstrous Greys, I think it's some kind of good cop, bad cop bait and switch that's being set up here to ultimately put us in a position of captivation. And you first see this in 1950s Italy. There's a case that I cover in Closer Encounters. This guy, Bruno Sammachichia, and his associates were engaged by these Nordics who had underground bases. And they claimed, first of all, as you see with all these cases of encounters with Nordics, demonstration of tremendous psi abilities. These Nordics are all telepathic. They can perform, impressive telekinetic feats and so on and so forth. But what this Bruno Sammachichia and his associates said is that these Nordics were so benevolent, like they would never harm a fly. But they told us that there were these other entities, the Contrari, the CTR, the Contrari, who are these little robotic entities, and they're soulless, and they just want to, they want control over the human soul because they don't have souls themselves, and they're locked in a millennial battle with these beings. So this Nordics versus Grey narrative goes all the way back to the 1950s. Interestingly, Sammachichia makes a little note that, at one point it occurred to me that the SS were involved in eugenics programs, and there were rumors that after the war...
Someone say eugenics. Do we need to get out the Polarity eugenics policy? Because I have it in my file just here. We can go into that, or maybe we'll save that for another time.
Or these eugenics programs were continued in secret in underground facilities and so on and so forth. And I wonder whether these people that we saw, and they also saw very young people fitting this Nordic type, were basically products, outcomes of such programs that had begun in the Second World War. He engages, albeit briefly, in that kind of speculation. So, long story short, my point is that these people are integral to human history and to the development of human society. We're not dealing with something that's coming from the outside. I think we're dealing with a faction of humanity that's positioned itself as a sort of overlord or master caste above the common herd, and they have adopted all kinds of guises and disguises to, strategically deceive us for the sake of the preservation of their control system.
So I think the chat might have been getting a little bit carried away there at the end when I was speaking about eugenics. But that last little bit there was really important. I think, he's saying that he believes that these Nordics who are seen in like a recurring theme throughout history going far back, and that's what we're going to start getting into next, that they've established themselves high enough with enough control structures, with enough technology. And I think the technology is probably key, right? Because that technology, as long as that technology is out of our hands and always in theirs, then that control structure is never, ever, ever going to shift. Ever. Especially if it's the kind of technology that we're talking about, right? And that's where we're going to start getting into a little bit more now, is the Nordics and the control that they exert over humanity. Potentially. Maybe it's all a psyop. Maybe we all need to go to a mental health facility. I don't know, but it's interesting. Achy Balls with $50. That is real money, sir. Thank you very, very much for the support. You're always in here, and I appreciate that. He says 0 point. How it's accessed and its natural order is the cosmos is 100% understood. While suppressed, the current standard laws of physics are flawed. In its place, it instantly dissolves all mysteries but exposes the lie. Hence, it's classified. Yeah, I think the 0 point, the free energy and how it's extracted is absolutely the big thing. It's the big thing. I think that's what Dylan Borland was referring to in his recent interview, where he said, you know, well, I mean, Jeremy Corbell kind of alluded to it as well, that it's not the craft, it's the tech, it's the propulsion, it's what powers it. Because 0 point energy would just flip the world on its head in such a crazy way that it would be destabilizing for a little while. Even like even if it's going to come good, it's going to be destabilizing for a little while at the bare minimum. I can't see it going any other way. That being said, still want it. Still want it, 100%. Stevie says Jason is saying it's all the juice box aliens. I don't know what you mean by that, sir. Juice box? What? That's crazy. So you're saying it's all the juices? I don't know what that means, but I don't know. I feel like you might be right though. I don't know. Anyway, let's go on to a classic, a Polarity classic. Okay, if you're a regular of this channel, we all appreciate this man very much, and you know, I do like to jump around a little bit. And we're going back to 1993 now, a speech that was given by Command Sergeant Robert Dean. Lots of great clips from this speech, but this is Bob Dean going deep on who we are and how we got here and who seeded us.
Entities. In the old Hebrew, they called them Elohim. It's a translation roughly meaning those who came down from above. It was mistranslated over the years as the sons of the gods. But the Elohim in the book of Genesis are saying, and this is a quote, "Let us, plural, create man in our, plural, image." And when I was a boy, I used to ask my preacher, I used to go to Sunday school, my goodness, what does that mean?
I like juice boxes too, by the way. Big juice box fan, actually. Love apple juice.
And it was amazing how many times most of the preachers would say, we'll discuss that later. Or they didn't have an answer for you. I always wondered about that passage in the book of Genesis. Let us create man in our image. Who are they? Who are the...
Someone said, is this guy a preacher? I'll just clarify for anyone who doesn't know. Robert Dean held one of, if not potentially still the highest clearance possible in NATO, which is called Cosmic Top Secret. It's so high, it actually sounds like something from Star Trek, but you can look it up. Cosmic Top Secret is a real clearance. This guy held it, was in the military for, I don't actually know how long, but I know he got out in 1976, I believe. And, you know, he talks about a specific file called the assessment, which was only available to be viewed by like the 8 or 9 people who held this clearance. And in this assessment, it was basically the assessment of the extraterrestrial situation and what is going on with like whatever is interacting with humanity at that time. And this is what he speaks a lot about.
Plurals. You know, I was told by the preacher that we were all created by God. Well, I began digging and digging and digging, and I was a very nasty little student. I never accepted a lot of their answers. The human race is a hybrid. We have been seeded here. The evidence is overwhelming. Apparently, this seems to be what has happened. Several 100,000 years ago, an intelligent race from somewhere else out there came by the planet, knew of the planet, stopped at the planet, and found a developing form of life here. Now, there are theories that the original seeding itself was done by an intelligent race from other places. But some of the theories have stated that this advanced intelligence was on an excursion, a trip, and they stopped off here and found a developing form of life and decided to manipulate that developing form of life into a higher form. And they've been involved in that off and on, but continually, for at least 100,000 years. Then there were other little curious things taking place. Why? About 5000 BC in Sumer, did all kinds of things happen at once. A literal eruption of civilization taking place in the Euphrates and Tigris and Euphrates valleys. I mean, civilization blossomed and bloomed almost overnight. The people were taught, or they learned, agriculture, irrigation. They built cities. They knew how to plant farms. They knew how to harvest. They knew how to develop intricate governmental systems. They developed a military idea. They developed a very intricate theological and philosophical philosophy.
All over the world, at a time when people weren't flying and, meeting each other all independently around the world at a very similar time, this knowledge was shared with different groups.
And where did this all happen? Why did it all happen literally overnight? It's all there. The Sumerians told us how it happened, how it came to be, where they got the knowledge, who taught them the knowledge. And this fits, and I tell you it does, fit perfectly with every other story, myth, legend, history of every people on this entire planet. The human race is a hybrid. We were seeded here, and we have had what I like to call an intimate interrelationship with high technology, advanced intelligence for hundreds of thousands of years. Now, the crucial thing is it is still going on. It hasn't stopped. They are still involved. And the big question has been for many of us is, who the hell are they? And what are they doing with us?
We're containers. Or maybe we're also a slave race. What do you guys think? If you just had to put one guess, gun to your head, you just had to throw out an idea of what you think the point is. Are we a soul housing unit for something else? Are we cattle? Are we slaves? What do you guys think? Get in the chat. Just a one-word answer. Hit me.
Ties in perfectly with the ancient philosophical questions that each and every one of us has asked.
Marinda says we're pets. Hopefully you're not going to see a photo of me on a leash in the Walkies channel in Discord.
Who are we? Who are we? How did we come to be here? What are we here for? And where are we going? And this is, if you remember from your own teachings, education, in school or church, the basic questions that human beings have been asking since the beginning of time. Who are we? Why are we here? And where are we going? And now in the last 25, maybe 50 years, enough people on this planet have seen enough evidence. They have had literally some of the facts and some of the evidence rubbed on their nose. And the world, the people of the planet, are slowly beginning to pay attention. And that, to me, is the gratifying part, which has kept me involved in this and kept me committed in my small way to bring some of this information out. Not to preach to you, not to have a crusade of any kind, but simply to tell you that you are a special species. The carpenter from Galilee tried to explain it. Krishna tried to explain it. Mohammed tried to tell the story. Zoroaster tried to tell the same basic story. The Buddha even tried. Why is it that it's taken us so long to begin to grasp a little of the reality of who we are, why we're here, and what's going on?
Someone just said, bro can give a speech. Yes, he can. And guys, if you really like that clip, I haven't linked it below, but I covered this speech as well as a few other things in a much older video of mine from around March. I believe it's called, it says like they seeded all religions on the thumbnail or something like that. It's got a picture of John Blitch and a mantis and religious symbols. Go and check it out. I'll try and chuck it in below as well afterwards. But he's a great talker, and we do watch a lot of Bob Dean on this channel because he is just enjoyable to listen to. Some people have different opinions about him. Some people, think he was maybe misled or whatever. I mean, who knows? But to me, a lot of the dots seem to connect to a lot of the things that he says. And, you know, he definitely comes, he comes across in a way of, he definitely believes what he's saying. He definitely believes it. So, you know, there's that. But it's interesting to hear the whole, you know, that they've, like this story, the story of humanity is perhaps an experiment, and it's not new. It's happened before. And when I asked the question to you guys, I would say the most common answer in the chat was that we are some kind of experiment. So I wonder if we go back to what Jorjani was saying before about Mars and the fact that there are these, you know, these mineral isotope ratios that show that there must have been some kind of nuclear fallout, some thermonuclear catastrophe on Mars. It makes me wonder if maybe Mars was the last experiment, and maybe we did nuke ourselves to death, and maybe they did get in the moon and travel over to Earth and try again. And maybe since we started letting off nukes, that's why the UAP phenomenon is so interested in us, because they don't want their experiment to go wrong again. I don't know. I mean, it makes sense, right? I'm not saying that's what it is. What would I know? I'm just a guy in a beanie in my bedroom, but you know, kind of makes sense. 420 Breezy, $10 says, what if we're put here because we have an ape mindset and this planet is being used to elevate our souls or mind? I definitely, you know, I think that's a positive theory, and I like it. I know that's sort of along the lines of what Jordan Crowder believes, that Earth is like a consciousness simulator. And, you know, we're here to learn, to go through hard times, to improve, learn lessons, and you will basically keep reincarnating here on Earth until you learn those lessons, and you will keep facing the same trials and tribulations until you get it, till you work it out. And that kind of aligns with the idea when people talk about heaven and hell, that heaven and hell isn't actually a physical place, it's a state of being. That if you can learn those lessons and, you know, ascend in a emotional, vibrational sense, then you achieve like a heavenly state and a state of enlightenment. And maybe once you do that, maybe once that life is over, you don't reincarnate on the planet. Maybe you become a higher being of light. Who knows? You know, I'm not talking like I know, just throwing out some ideas that kind of make a little bit of sense to me. But also, I attend my local mental health facility with 20% off because I liked the video, and you can too if you like the video. Get 20% off at your local mental health facility, which you probably will need. Now, the next clip, we're going back to Jorjani, but not the Jesse Michels one. This one is a different clip, but where he's going a little bit deeper on the Nordics. So let's check this out.
One of the things that I find so disturbing about the close encounter phenomenon is the uniformity of these Nordic people, where, you know, they're all white. They're all these tall white people, mostly with a very Nordic phenotype. In other words, either blonde hair, platinum blonde, or redheaded and blue or green eyes, maybe gray eyes. But, you know, basically all Nordic looking people. And apparently all of them, you know, just like specimens of aesthetic perfection according to the kind of Greco-Roman ideal, essentially. Look, I mean, if these people have mastered the manipulation of hyperspace, if they have a hyperdimensional relationship to our space-time, and we know they interacted with the ancient Mayan culture, we know they interacted with ancient Egyptians. I mean, basically every single culture on this planet has a record of interacting with these Nordic folks, and pretty much identifies them very clearly as the engineers and architects of these enigmatic megalithic structures that we find in every continent, to the point where it appears that what Plato called Atlantis, in other words, some antediluvian super civilization, was a civilization constituted either by these people or of hybrids produced by the interbreeding of these people with the ordinary stock of humanity. Like, for example, the case of Sir Horsley.
This story is kind of wild. Waruna Farm says Nordics are hot. Thank you, sir. Great observation. And the Wrath of Khan even says the Nordics mastered eugenics. It certainly does seem like it. Kind of interesting that apparently Hitler was very interested in blonde hair, blue-eyed people as well. Maybe he was trying to become a Nordic. Maybe he was partnered with the Nordics. Who knows?
He was a guy who was he had like carte blanche access to the British royal family in the 1960s. He was a high-level British military officer who eventually wound up so accomplished, so decorated, and so worthy of trust that he was one of the few people in the United Kingdom with his finger on the nuclear button. Okay, very high-level British military official. In the 1960s, Sir Horsley was engaged by two of these Nordics. One of them, cynically named, supposedly, Mr. Janus. And
Janus, I mean, when I hear Janus, I think Janice, and I just think that is like the worst name for an alien, for a Nordic. But apparently it's Janus, like anus, but with a J. So there you go. Makes a bit more sense now.
And then some other woman who was intermediary between him and Janus and eventually introduced him to Janus directly. And he basically described this woman as being kind of like Lady Dracula. I mean, she was like, had this very vampiric aura to her. But they were tall white people.
First name Hugh, last name Janus.
And they basically admitted to Horsley, look, we are the people flying around in the saucers. And we live here. A certain contingent of us lives on the surface. And what we want to do is to get you all to disarm, your nuclear arsenals. And he, they both of them together worked on Horsley to try to get him to go back to the British government and, convince them that the United Kingdom should engage in nuclear disarmament and to at least stop building nuclear weapons. So when you look at the specifics of this case, like these people had rented a freaking apartment somewhere, okay? And this Horsley came and had a fireside chat with Mr. Janus in his apartment. And then, fortunately, Horsley was no shit for brains. And he basically realized that these people were trying to render us defenseless in the face of their machinations by disarming us of our nukes. And he went and he reported this to British intelligence, and the British intelligence came and investigated who the fuck these people are. And by the time, I'm sure they had some early warning that, MI5 was coming for them. And by the time, their apartment was investigated, the whole apartment had been cleared out, One of
the couple of interesting things from that one. First of all, this guy here, not Hugh Janus, where is he? Where did he show him? This guy here. Peter Horsley. Apparently met Nordic beings and they were trying to convince him that they need to take away their nukes. And it's interesting to hear that he took this and reported it back to the monarchy, the military, whatever, as like, these people are trying to render us defenseless. And, I understand that. It's like, it's their job to like defend the country. But, what if that isn't the case? Like, what if we are being paranoid? What if that was a genuine attempt to be like, hey, we want to bring you guys into like a spacefaring civilization, but like, you can't bring nukes out there. Okay. No one, like, it's not allowed. So if you guys could put those down for a moment, that'd be great. If you guys could stop blowing each other up, that'd be fantastic. And we can all get along. And instead of doing that, they just went, they're trying to take away our nukes. Kill them. Reminds me of the Simpsons episode where Mr. Burns comes out of the woods going like, I bring you love. And they're like, he brings love. Kill it. That's how I picture this going down. There was something else here that was interesting. It's escaped me. It's escaped me for now. I'm sure it'll come back to me. We can jump on to the next clip. Then this is actually the last Jorjani clip and the last one from Jesse Michels. Only a quick one, and I really like it because it reinforces my own beliefs. That's why. I'll be straight up honest with you. I like this clip because Jason and Jesse both say something that I've been saying for a long time that is a wild thing to say. So when I hear people reinforce my own beliefs, I like it because I'm a human and that's what we do.
If there was some rebellion in Atlantis or whatever you want to call that civilization, which Plato recounts in Timaeus and Critias and so forth, is that an unfinished struggle? And does some kind of a social and psychological revolution need to take place that dismantles this power structure?
Mm.
And I think that's what disclosure really hinges on. Because
go.
until and unless this power structure is dismantled, we're not going to get any disclosure. We're going to get a new form of disinformation that reinforces the extant power structure.
That feels
Put it on a t-shirt, Jason. This is what I'm saying, guys. And you know, and people don't like it because they think I'm being a debunker or being a skeptic. And you guys, if you know me, you know I'm so all in on reptilians and just all of it. I'm so all in. But at the same time, I'm like, the people that are telling us all these stories are the same people who have lied for 100 years and they still haven't admitted that they lied and they still are pretending like they've never lied, but now they're suddenly telling us the truth without acknowledging anything that's gone on before 2017. Like, it just, hello, you're going to get a version of disclosure that like temporarily satisfies people just enough that keeps the existing control structure and makes anyone devoid of any consequences or accountability for crimes and things that have been committed. The only way actual disclosure happens is literally like knock it down, start again, new society. Because society, and this sounds so like negative and conspiratorial and whatever, but like our society, at least the West, but probably other countries too, but I can't comment on that. But the West is built on crooked foundations. And when I say crooked, I mean it in every sense of the word, as in like criminals. People who don't care about us. We need we need a reset. Absolutely. Maggie, I missed your vibe sticker. Thank you very much. I appreciate you, Maggie.
right. I mean, a great example of this is Trump takes office. He promises broad disclosure across a lot of different vectors. JFK.
Rambo says fake and gay, and yes, sir. I think that is actually the scientific term for what is going on here right now. It is actually fake and gay, and that is from a peer-reviewed paper that just came out recently.
UFO disclosure, on various podcasts, he goes, we have to do it,
Yeah.
And then, of course, the Epstein files was really this rallying cry of this whole kind of, truth-seeking MAGA base, and he brought together this kind of coalition of former liberals, RFK Jr., Tulsi, and it was like, we're going to find the truth on this stuff. Day one, he removes the security clearances of a lot of his stated political enemies, people who are the architects of Russiagate, saying use this, asset of Putin and whatever. And it's like,
okay, so I've already had Jason, corroborate my own beliefs, and now Jesse's going to do it. It
doesn't matter how you play the game of musical chairs, but there is some power structure that exists above the White House that it's almost like they have, a full panopticon ability, the complete 360 surveillance abilities, they're mind melded with the entire elite power structure or something. And we just can't get any sort of disclosure on this stuff. It's weird. And it's almost like there's some sort of undetectable dark matter. When you have like Hunter Biden was just interviewed by the
he hasn't said it yet, but by the way, did you guys see this interview with Hunter Biden? It was basically like a sponsorship for crack. The guy just went off talking about crack. It was crazy. I couldn't believe it. Anyway, that's kind of irrelevant, but if you haven't seen that, you should go watch it. It's nuts.
Channel 5 news guy, this Andrew Callaghan, he's saying, clearly, you have all these like elite you have Dershowitz going on podcasts saying, it's clear this was some sort of like, compromat, gathering thing, and that was Epstein's lawyer. It's like, why can't we get and make any sort of progress on this? It feels like there is something almost paranormal on the layer of Epstein.
And Jorjani says, well, there is. I think what Jesse is saying there, and I can't speak for him, but he uses the word paranormal, and I think that's a very soft and delicate way to put what I think we all know is going on here. It's big, like, why else would these hardened tier 1 operators be going in to, you know, Senate members, Congress, and whatever, and as we're told, trembling with fear? Trembling. Why would Clinton try to put an end to all of this and then decide it's too dangerous? Why does every disclosure attempt fall flat on its ass, regardless of what happens? Because it's not in our hands. And when I say our, I mean human. Because the control structure is non-human. And I think that's what Jesse is saying there. Again, I can't speak for him, but I think he's saying that, but using the word paranormal because it kind of remains a little bit more vague. But I think he's saying it's something a bit more non-human. And it makes... And like I said this in the interview with Jason Somoza the other day. When you remove like the whole like, oh my God, that's just so crazy factor and like the emotion from that theory, like so many other things in the world that are like, why is this like this? Why are we like this? Why can't we stop doing this? Why are there all these problems here? If you apply that to it, that's something that is like a sort of non-human or sees us as like lesser than is controlling us. It's like pretty much all of those things are like, oh, okay, that actually makes a bit more sense now. But people don't want to talk about that. Maybe that's the terrible truth that Nick Pope wrote about. Maybe that's why the truth will discredit you, like Stephen Greer said. And maybe that is why the truth is classified. And maybe that's why they like to talk about spooky little ships and little greys and things like that, because it keeps the story spinning. But in reality, the truth is much darker than that, that we are essentially some kind of experimental farm, soul housing unit, something like that. But for us, you know, we can theorize that. We can talk about that. And, you know, it's kind of crazy, but we can talk about it. Do you want to go try and tell your average, you know, CNN 60-year-old viewer with a hearing aid that? You'll probably, I mean, the eyes will just glaze over and they'll start staring through you if you're lucky. And if you're not lucky, they'll probably just laugh at you. You know, actually, one of the comments on I wish I had it pulled up, but if you scroll through the comments on this podcast, which you should absolutely go and watch, one of the top comments was like, you guys ever stop and realize how deep down the rabbit hole we are? And it said something like, most people on CNN are like, woo, I wonder if the aliens are real. And like, here we are talking about like Nordics running society from an hollow moon spaceship. And we're all like, yeah, that sounds like it could be true. It's fucking crazy, but I'm here for it.
Okay,
Well, for sure there is.
Okay, so what's going on?
But I think there are two sources to what have been, you know, lumped together as, you know, UAP, right? Unexplained, whatever, aerial or anomalous phenomena. There are two distinct sources of these various manifestations. One is this whole Nordic control system that I've been laying out, but there's another one that's radically different. And that manifests in terms of events and experiences that express the trickster archetype.
There we go. That is the last clip from Jorjani there. We've got something else though. Don't worry, relax. Don't leave just yet. We've got more. Got something special for you. Just quickly though, Conspiracy Cutie again with $20. Thank you very much. I appreciate your generosity. She says, because Josh is the man, everyone make sure to go touch grass. Remember the power that you have within. Be kind to others and don't drink the Kool-Aid. Reality is fake and gay and unicorns exist. Stay weird. Print all of that on a t-shirt. All of it. Thank you very much. They are some wise words to live by and to remember. And, you know, like I said, guys, I think the way I stay in this and stay sane, you know, partly because I use my 20% discount that I use from liking the video at my mental health facility, but also because I always keep one foot out. And the beauty of having one foot out in all of this is it means you can put one foot in lots of different things. Once you put 2 feet in something, you're all in. And when you're all in on something, not only can you become disconnected from reality, but you are now locked into that theory. And like, you know, you can't really pivot from that. But when you sort of remain a bit more objective, a bit more on the fence, a bit more willing to just soak in the information and talk about it, you can sort of entertain lots of different things and you can put the pieces together, and it makes this a lot more fun because, you know, we are talking about wild topics. Some of them are probably true and dark, but if you can't talk about it and stay in a good headspace, then that's not good either. It is really important to make sure you stay connected to reality. And that's why I tell you guys every single day to go outside and touch grass, go and smell some fresh air, because it really does make a big difference. It sounds silly and simple, but it makes a big difference. Okay, last clip. This is a long one. Well, it's 10 minutes, but this is a compilation. So we've got lots of different things here, but it's all about sort of moon, non-human intelligence and stuff like that, right? We're going to be hearing from Tom DeLonge. We're going to be hearing from Bill Tompkins. And I swear there's other people, but I can't remember them. You'll find out anyway. Andy says, I don't just go down the rabbit hole, I live in it. My man. Thank you very much, Andy. I appreciate that, bro. I'm with you. All right, let's check this out.
I think they did that with the moon. It's like, you know, we went to the moon, and then they put out this meme kind of thing. Like, we didn't go to the moon, but they didn't want people really going, well, what's on the moon?
Boeing's first stage booster is gone. North American's second stage booster is gone. Now we've got the S4B stage and the LEM, okay? So we're a very small vehicle, and this massive extraterrestrial vehicle is coming, looks like it's going to hit us. It didn't, and it had no intention. Simply came in, moved around us, and finished its orbit. Then those guys eventually landed.
Sorry, Conspiracy Cutie says, my cousin had schizophrenia. She passed now, but she used to tell me all the time that blonde hair, blue eyes people were out to get us. Maybe she was talking about Nordics. That's super interesting. And the only reason I read it out is because, you know, I do often wonder about people who are schizophrenic and, you know, other people with disabilities. I just wonder if maybe they actually have abilities that the rest of society doesn't understand, doesn't know how to cope with, or doesn't know how to process or deal with. So we just throw them in a cell and are like, fuck that, I don't know. I don't know. Just stay in there. That's basically how we deal with it. It's kind of tragic. And, you know, that's not the case for everyone. There definitely are people with real problems for sure. But I think there's a lot of people with crazy abilities that get lumped in with that because that's just the way society is, unfortunately. Bleak celebrating 5 months as a member. My man, humor keeps us grounded in how we will survive. I agree, sir. And that's why I try to keep the show fun and entertaining and have a laugh at the same time. Because when you're talking about the world being enslaved by Nordic people for thousands of years who operate off a Death Star moon, if you don't laugh, you'll cry.
On the high edge of the craters, like the steep part of the outside edges of the round craters. They didn't land, they parked above it and they hovered.
They were hovering, just like it shows in your drawing?
Yeah. It was determined that when Neil Armstrong said, "Good God, sir, they are enormous," referring to these massive extraterrestrial craft, okay? They weren't crafts, they were ships. They were not crafts, they were ships.
And Andy celebrating 8 months as a member. God, that is early. That's as early as it gets, actually. OG Weirdo, still love the content, brother. I appreciate it, man. You are one of the names that I recognize that have been here basically since day one, dude. I really do appreciate it. Thank you very much, Andy. And Stevie says, what fits 100% with this is a book by Michael Desmarcus called, oh, Stevie, what are you doing to me, brother? Called the Theuber Prophecy. I tried. Check the recent interview from That UFO podcast with Samuel Chong where they talk about it. Thank you very much, sir. I'll have to work out how to spell and pronounce those things, but I'll get onto it. Appreciate you, Stevie.
Advisors use the term the others?
Yes. In my communications with certain people within my advisory group, it is referred to as the others. The others makes a lot of sense because the first thing people need to realize about the UFO phenomenon is it is intelligence that is here, has always been here, and I think calling them the others makes a lot more sense because they're in our oceans, they're on our moon, they might be underground in certain places. So you're talking about the other groups of intelligences that are here on the planet with us.
And doesn't that make more... It kind of makes sense too, right? That they use the term the others if we're talking about Nordics, right? Because, you know, if these were like little reptilians or greys or whatever, they'd probably be using a term like aliens or something like that. Like, I feel like... I mean, this is just me theorizing, right? But I feel like the others is a very suitable term for like humans that aren't really part of our group. They're like the other humans, the others. I don't know. I could be reaching and connecting dots there that don't really connect, but I don't know. Kind of makes it would make sense. Stephen Shigley says Brazilian president voice change video, reptilian. I have no idea what you're talking about, Stephen, but I like the sound of it. I do. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Really were. You know, I remember being at a party and someone whispered in my ear that worked for one of these big defense contractors and said, "Hey, we've been mining on the moon for 30 years. For 30 years, we've been mining on the moon."
And this guy's serious. This was a serious person.
It's a very serious person, and but no one knows about this stuff. So a lot of my fascination, you know, it isn't about trying to prove that aliens are real. It's more or less like, you know, if there's a secret about this stuff, there's a good reason. It's either these guys are so scared of something that they haven't been able to do what they needed to do, or they don't have all the facts yet, so they're not ready to release it. There's something that they're either scared of or they're not sure enough in themselves to release it, and that's the kind of thing that I ask myself, like, what is the reasons for them not telling people? It's because I would believe the only reason is because they're too scared to. Not because it's going to bring down religion, not because it's going to make us all run around in circles. I think it's because they're trying to do something that's much more serious. And
what could that be, by the way? And look, I'll just throw out a quick theory here that I think about, right? If this is a Nordic control structure and you know, this is what I wonder. This is just a theory. What if the UFO reverse engineering programs and all that kind of stuff is so secret because what they're doing is they've realized that we are in some kind of cattle farm. We are under the control of this group of the others who are humans that have this wild technology that we don't have. And the only way we could ever go toe-to-toe with them or potentially get out of this control structure is to steal their technology and learn how it works and then use it back against them. So it's not that like we don't want the people to know what's going on. It's we don't want this getting out because we don't want them to know. We don't want the others to know because we're reverse engineering their shit and we're trying to use that against them. Or that in 2027 we're going to pop off. We're going to have a go. We're going to try and get rid of them in 2027. You know, who knows? Like, you know, it's to me, something like that would make more sense than just like, oh, we don't want to tell the people about it. You know what I mean? That just seems a bit like, I don't know. Maybe I'm being a little bit too optimistic there. A lot of people mentioning that Brazilian president voice change video. Guys, if you have a link, chuck it in Discord. The link to our Discord is down below. It's open to everyone, but the members have their own section in there as well. I would love to check it out. And Tamara, celebrating 8 months as a member as well. Another OG, Tamara. Thank you very much. She says, I love all the weirdos in our community, and it's because Josh brought us together. Thank you, Josh. It is my pleasure. It is my pleasure. Absolutely.
Then people will start to understand over time why they did what they did. They didn't lie to people just out of like ego. They were like, okay, there's this group called ISIS and they're here and we need to understand them and we need to fucking figure it out quick. But the problem is
these are extraordinarily advanced civilizations that have been coming here forever. That's why it's all in all the ancient fucking scripts and texts. And
Dope Shazam says, Josh, stop. That's not it. I don't think I will.
Carved into rocks and all that shit.
And that's the way they viewed the Wandjina stories. The Wandjina stories were essentially stories of beings that came down and visited the Aboriginal people 30, 40,000 years ago.
Classic story, this one. Classic story. I'm sure most people have seen a lot of the Wandjina pictures, right? These things just look undeniably like greys. Undeniably.
There are similar stories, by the way, that go right back to Assyrian civilization. I mean, the other side of this that is fascinating is I've been engaging with archaeologists and anthropologists who've talked to me about the implausibility of a lot of the modern explanations for some of the ancient buildings that exist on this planet that do not fit within the time frames of known human technology being developed. Even some of the Egyptian pyramids could not possibly have been built within the time frame that we've described because they were working with bronze axes. And you have almost laser beam accuracy in some of the buildings that were constructed. Some of the people that I've been talking to in the Pentagon have told me that they think there is strong evidence to suggest that there was a previous civilization on this planet. And one of the things that's been suggested to me is that there might have been a civilization that has shared this planet with us that never left.
And that's absolutely, that's 100% the way I lean. By the way, I feel like that clip was really from like, you know, Ross's like prime era. It, you know, that was like good Ross. Not that he's not good anymore, but he definitely, you know, people are a little bit unsure of him. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion, of course. But I feel like before Ross was like fully like News Nation exclusive, and he was sort of just like floating around doing stories, that I feel like that was peak. That was peak Ross, absolutely. Elle, celebrating a month as a member, says, I'm grateful and humbled by the support in here. Bless you all, and Josh and Suki. Thank you very much, Elle. It's a pleasure to have you, and always enjoy your support and kind messages as well. Open Door Policy Podcast says, talking Nordics again, please look into the 7 fires prophecy of the Algonquin natives in Canada, please. It's relevant now more than ever. Please drop a link for me. Drop a link for me in Discord. I'm always interested in native cultures, like prophecies and belief stories. I would like to check that out. And Heidi is coming in with some critical information here. The politician video from Brazil was a fake. It was edited and circulated as a smear campaign against him. I've watched the original. It was clipped and edited from. I was disappointed. I'm not going to lie. Damn. Another reptilian story disproved. I'm still banking on Lacerda being real, though.
All the different areas of the world have different stories of God, and I call that the little g. These are beings that have godlike powers that are metal.
Steve Z says, the gods are cringe AF. I don't even have anything to say back to that. I just think it's a funny thing to say.
In the future, right?
That is exactly what is being told to me.
Is there any speculation as to what they're doing?
Resource extraction,
like minerals,
empire building.
Life,
I tell people
sperm,
I think it's
cheese.
I think it's tacos.
They're here
I think
for water.
they're here for the same reason I am. But I tell people like a good way to look at this is like look at Syria, and Syria's in chaos because the United States and Russia are having a proxy war there. Mm-hmm. Now look at the Earth. It's the exact same thing. Different races are coming here. And they're trying to win and against each other.
So there's more than one race.
Yeah.
How many
this
different
universe we're talking about.
Right.
I don't know how many. I don't know.
But there's a bunch of different creatures, and they all have the same sort of technology.
Yeah, and some are very human. Some look just like you and I.
Really?
Yep, like Nordics. Always kind of get like mildly triggered watching these podcast clips back because Joe's just such a dick. And I'm a Joe Rogan fan, by the way. Not like every episode, but I like him. But God, he was so like skeptical, and not like he is now when he was talking to Tom. I would love to see Tom back on there and see how the conversation would fly in 2025.
Absolutely, yeah.
In Iraq, you write that Bush said to Chirac, quote, Jacques, you and I share a common faith. You're Roman Catholic, I'm Methodist, but we are both Christians committed to the teachings of the Bible. We share one common Lord. Bush goes on to say, quote, Gog and Magog are at work in the Middle East. Biblical prophecies are being fulfilled.
I mean, what? What was that, President of the United States, George Bush, from the Skull and Bones Society? Gog and Magog are at work in the Middle East and biblical prophecies are being fulfilled? That's a weird thing to say for the President of the United States.
This confrontation is willed by God, who wants to use this conflict to erase his people's enemies before a new age begins. End quote.
They think there was some sort of a mole-type creature that evolved over 65 million years to become
That's
us.
all bullshit. I think that's all bullshit. Do
you think evolution's bullshit?
No, I think that at some point in history, someone came here and tampered with existing creatures and made us and upgraded us at very specific intervals.
Bodies were recovered.
That is the only thing that makes sense, by the way. Like, when people say we evolved from monkeys, why is there still monkeys then, dude? Why is there still monkeys here? Riddle me that. I don't actually get that. Like, how does that argument stand up? What are they, like, I just can't see an answer to it.
Their DNA was examined, and they know what that alien genome looked like, and they look at humans, and they can identify the same sequences in human genome. I think that's what led them to believe that there's an hybridization of humans. And they further said in this one-day symposium that there are familial lines, there are families that have not only alien DNA, but enhanced alien DNA of interest to CIA.
Yeah, I don't know. I do know that there's connections to, man, you won't even fucking believe it. I'll tell you that. You want to hear
Please.
It? Atlantis.
Atlantis, the sunken city?
Yeah.
There's a connection?
There's a connection.
What's the connection?
That there's a very advanced group that left after a catastrophe and hung around in a small outpost here and throughout time would push civilization forward, and that's who the Greek gods were.
Whoa.
Yep. And that's why it's very interesting on the Roswell wreckage there's Greek writing.
Is there?
Yeah, there is.
Check this out. Isn't it weird that I'm learning these things about human consciousness and how it repels negative things or whatever? And my band Angels and Airwaves did a double album in a movie called Love.
Yes, right.
As an experiment.
Right.
Because it was an experiment of intention. I saw some dude freezing water molecules, and he would write on a piece of paper. He would write love or hate or whatever. And depending on what he wrote on that piece of paper, he would tape it to these little jars of water. And under the microscope, if he just wrote with a pencil love, the water would freeze in these beautiful symmetrical crystals. If he wrote rape or hate or war, they would be these gelatinous blobs that looked deformed. And so I said, well, let's name this whole project Love, and let's write it weird with a little astronaut sitting on the moon and make it esoteric. And when people look at it, they all know what the word love means, so there's going to be an energy projected towards it, and let's see how good it does. Let's see if it...
Fantastic album too, by the way. If anyone hasn't listened to Angels and Airways, Love, really good album. And also pretty interesting, another interesting moon video here.
matters. Let's see if that's a good art project. And it did insane. It did super good. And a lot of what that band is about is that kind of stuff, you know. But like now I'm like tripping because I was already kind of doing it, and now I'm like learning that's a real thing. That it's like a real thing that the military and the intelligence community and other areas of the DoD know about and take very seriously. That the human spirituality component of consciousness and the positive feelings of love and happiness is very important.
Yes, they are. Your intention is absolutely everything. Tamara says, Josh, that looks more like the sun. It was color corrected. The first clip was the moon, and then they color corrected it just so you could see what was going on a little bit more. BT says, Gog and Magog is Israel. The place in the far north is Ukraine. Revelation talks specifically about judgment against them. Yeah, look, I don't know the Bible back to front, but there are a lot of interesting things in Revelation that I've seen that seem to really align with what is going on in the world right now. It's very, very interesting. Open Door Policy says, I can't send links on here. There's YouTube on it. Yeah, put the link in the Discord, bro. Discord is free. Link is down there. Guys, I think we should take a leaf out of the book of what we just heard from Tom DeLonge there and think about how your intentions basically create the reality that you live in, and how a large group of people, like the nearly 1,500 that we have watching the stream right now, what kind of difference that could make if everyone decided to put out some positive, loving intention out into the world. So you know what? First of all, let's do that now. Let's just get some love hearts up in the chat, because, you know, it's a good way to spread the vibes. It's always love here. Even when we're telling jokes, maybe teasing people, having a good time, it's all for a good place. We all want a good outcome, and we all want the best for everybody. And guys, if you enjoyed this stream as well, slap a like on the video. We've got nearly 1,500 people here. Imagine what we could do if we all liked it. Well, I can tell you, we would have 1,500 likes, and that would be really, really amazing for me, and I would appreciate it. Guys, I hope you had fun today. I hope you learned something. Make sure you get outside, fresh air, touch grass, and I'll see you tomorrow. Take care.
Actually, people are going to say, what the hell is going on?
No matter how far you go into the dark, when you flip, you go exactly the same place to the light in our galaxy. Everything. Because everything is in balance. Everything is a polarity.
I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is.